New this morning, growing concern among current and former defense officials over President Trump's purge of the National Security Agency and the National Security Council. Sources now telling CNN the firings took place on the advice of Laura Loomer, a right-wing conspiracy theorist who met with President Trump on Wednesday. Let's get some analysis from CNN national security analyst Beth Sanner. She served as the Deputy Director of National Intelligence during the first Trump administration. Beth, thanks so much for joining us. How do you think U.S. adversaries are reading these firings right now?
Well, Wolf, I always think about how I would feel in the U.S. intelligence community when something similar happened in an adversary's intelligence community. And it was always a great day for U.S. intelligence when our adversaries were in chaos. And we've seen this in Iran and Russia, and the same thing now is happening here. Our adversaries will look at the United States and say, this is a great day because the NSA is going to be on its back heels. It is going to be, every person who works there will be wondering what's going to happen next. They will be so distracted, and not just at NSA, at every part of the intelligence community in the United States. This makes us weaker. It doesn't protect our national security.
Yeah, not just the NSA, the National Security Agency, but the National Security Council, the CIA, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. People are very worried. I've spoken to some of them. These firings come as National Security Advisor at the White House, Mike Waltz, is facing serious scrutiny for his role in that so-called Signalgate scandal. What do these moves say about his standing in the White House right now?
I think that when you heard the story, and you all have told the story about this Laura Loomer going into the Oval Office, a kind of conspiracy theory person who lives in the internet world, and she goes in, and Waltz is there but cannot defend the people whom he knows, whom he has vetted for these positions, against someone who has no idea about national security, no idea about what's at stake. And, you know, I think it really shows that he is quite weak in this, Wolf. And I just want to get back to this idea of NSA, if you'll allow me a minute. NSA is the most powerful part of our intelligence community, and maybe even, you know, of the U.S. government. And the power of that and who runs it and what they are allowed to do and not allowed to do can really affect any American's life. It's very, very serious.
Because they fired General Timothy Hogue and his deputy, the head of the National Security Agency. That's a big-time development, and presumably if that was simply based on what Laura Loomer is recommending to the president, what does that say to you?
It says that people are not thinking about national security and what we want our government to be doing in terms of our responsibilities, and instead are putting some kind of vague loyalty tests ahead of professional competence. And I don't even understand these charges that Laura Loomer has put forward, because General Ha is actually how you pronounce it. General Ha has no background in terms of being close to General Milley. He just happened to be at a place in time when General Milley was the person who had to put names forward. But he was someone who had spent his entire career at NSA and Cybercom and was the most qualified person. Wendy Noble has no connection to General Clapper, former director of national intelligence. These things are just not even true. And so what vetting has gone into the ideas behind why they were fired? She's claiming that they weren't vetted for loyalty. Well, who's vetting her claims that they're disloyal instead of actually being loyal to the American people and being competent in carrying out their very, very critical jobs? That's my question.
And as a former Pentagon correspondent myself, I can't remember a time when a 3- or 4-star general who's moved up the chain of command, a 3- or 4-star general has been fired under these kinds of circumstances. Beth Sanner, Thanks so much for joining us. We always appreciate it.
President Trump fired the two top officials at the National Security Agency last night after a meeting with conspiracy theorist Laura Loomer. Now, Loomer is a far-right activist who promotes theories like QAnon. She once claimed that 9/11 was an inside job. Sources have told CNN that during the meeting, Loomer encouraged the president to fire the director and deputy for being disloyal. The Trump administration also fired several staff members on the National Security Council. The president defended his meeting with Loomer while speaking to reporters on Air Force One.
Laura Loomer is a very good patriot. She is a very strong person, and I saw her yesterday for a little while. She makes recommendations of things and people, and sometimes I listen to those recommendations like I do with everybody.
CNN's Elena Treen is here with me now. Elena, you have been on the reporting team looking into this, and I know one of the things that you've learned is that Loomer brought with her a list of, about a dozen names to her meeting with Donald Trump that she wanted out?
That's essentially right. So she met with the president, I wouldn't say one-on-one. Well, it was supposed to be one-on-one, but there were other people in the room, like National Security Advisor Michael Waltz. And she brought this list, and you're right, the sources I spoke with said it had about a dozen names on them of people that she believed were disloyal to the president and wanted to fire. Now, it's hard to overstate how big a deal firing the top two people at the NSA is. Timothy Hawk, he's the director. His deputy, Wendy Noble. Hawk is someone who, of course, was Senate confirmed. He also ran U.S. Cyber Command. But the thing that she mentioned about him specifically, the director of the NSA, was that he was someone that Milley brought in himself. We know that the former Joint Chiefs of Staff, someone who worked closely with President Trump as well, has been someone that the president now very much dislikes. That was something I was told behind the scenes that was a reasoning for that particular dismissal. All to say, though, I think if you take a step back and you look at the context of this and the significance of it, I mean, Laura Loomer is someone who did actually have a lot of access to the president on the campaign. She flew with him a couple times on his private plane. But that was something that really got under the skin and was a big concern for top people, his top campaign officials, including then campaign manager Susie Wiles, who is now, of course, the president's chief of staff. She and others kind of put the kibosh on that during the campaign. So it's fascinating that now she's sort of having that access once again. And that's really the key question, is how did she even get this meeting with the president? And then, of course, you know, he believed in her enough and she had the influence enough to get him to actually go ahead with some of these names and move ahead with firing them.
A conspiracy theorist gets into the Oval Office, shows the president a list of 12 names, and many of them are fired just because she says that they are disloyal. That's pretty remarkable. Elena, thank you so much. Appreciate it.